Warrior Leadership.
All right.
And this time, and I don't know if y'all have noticed it, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. But we are actually going to be live today, and it's going to be just as amazing as it always has been. Because if you tune in and you hear this, we will be interacting with you. So make sure you put your comments while we're talking. But today, we're going to talk about servant leadership. How you doing, DB?
I'm doing good today, man. How you doing?
Well, I am actually pretty good. I have no complaints. I got to present talk about servant leadership. I got to present a patriotic employer award to someone in a high school, two people in a high school. It was the superintendent of the district and the principal of the high school. And you know, the award comments were wonderful. So this gentleman went off to warrant officer school to do his time for the Army National Guard so that he could receive a promotion and do better things for the military. And not only did they support him, you know, verbally every day, but when he had to leave, it take a whole Friday off for the entire 6 weeks during the time that he was in that training.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't, you know, dock his pay. They didn't do anything. They just supported him 110%. So let's talk about, we're talking about servant leadership. These people squared this guy away. And so I volunteer for the employer support for the Guard and Reserves. And we presented those employers with an award for doing such great things for that service member. And so I don't think my day could be any better because I got to recognize somebody for squaring away a soldier.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. And to be supported like that, not feel supported, to be supported is huge, man. And just, you know, when we think about servant leadership, man, that's really the heart of it, man. That's when you think about defining what servant leadership is do you put the welfare of your people above your own and make sure that they have those opportunities to grow and that they have those just that I think the key word is just opportunity, man. Having that opportunity to know that they are going to move forward and that they have someone that's backing them up, and a lot of times, sometimes even going before them. So that's awesome, man.
It was good, and I agree. You know, servant leadership, I suppose we can get into the meat and potatoes on that if you want to, but I define it the same way. You know, it's basically just putting the welfare and the needs of the other people before your own. And as far as work is concerned, it's all about that decentralized leadership where you're empowering others to take that little bit of ownership in their lane to be able to square away that work environment and have that best working relationship.
Wow. Man, when I hear you say decentralized leadership, man, the first thing I start thinking about government. And we don't get too political on warrior leadership, but you know, at the end of the day, man, when you said decentralized, and when you think about this aspect of servant leadership allows for people in local communities and, more importantly, in families on the ground level to lead their own lives. Like it's almost impossible when you have a centralized government or a centralized leadership that you're gonna actually meet the needs of the people that are local on that level. And so it's not nothing is a one size fits all. What happens in a organization in Idaho is different than an organization in Alaska or wherever it might be. There's different it's just differences. And so I think you have to support people and give them the resources and tools to move forward, but you can't try to like dictate and control it. And that goes back to what we were talking about before, previous to today, which is that toxic leadership and micromanaging.
Yeah, toxic leadership is basically, I guess if you wanted to sum it up in a different way that we haven't talked about it before, is just the opposite of being that servant leader. So servant leaders, they want to make sure that they are constantly taking care of others that are surrounding them and trying to find ways to be a benefit all the time, support other people in their role, whether it's senior same level or subordinate, it really doesn't matter. They just want to make sure that they are providing value to others. Now, there can be a certain bit of selfishness that goes into that, and that can be the heart filling stuff. But otherwise, they just want to make sure that they don't care how it gets done, but the work is getting done, and then everybody is having an enjoyable experience while they're doing that work. Oh, well, guess what? We lost DB there for a second, but I'm sure he'll pop right back in. And when it comes to servant leadership, if you don't put other people before you, then the chances of that the causing problems like we've discussed in the past, where there's that toxic leadership environment, it's significantly higher. And it's significantly higher because in today's work environment, the average worker, they are looking for that experience, right? They don't want to just go to work and go through the motions and embrace the suck every day. They want to go somewhere and feel like they're valued. And if they're not feeling like they're valued, then guess what? You look around. There are virtual opportunities for work. There are businesses hiring everywhere. Chances are they will find a place to go where they do feel valued. So you have to create that experience. And that's what servant leadership is all about. You focus on those tasks and statistics, and you focus on only the work. There's a certain element to where you have to do that. But when you focus on the people as well, and what I mean by that is, I mean, obviously you're gonna see the people. The people are gonna be there. But when I say focus on the people, I mean, oh, welcome back, DB. I know I was just talking about how the difference between servant leadership and non-servant leadership, where if you focus on the tasks and statistics and you're not wholly focusing on the people, then people will tend to leave the job because there's plenty of other opportunities out there for them. So when you focus on the people, that doesn't mean that you're not focusing on the work. You got to create that balance, but that's that mentality that we talk about all the time, where an organization is nothing more than a bunch of people that come together to do a job. And so taking care of them and making sure they're having that positive experience is what's going to make that business work.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? I think it's kind of counterintuitive, right? How can a leader be a servant at the same time? And so I think if you just open that up, I think most people reject this notion of servant leadership because they believe that as a leader they can't be a servant. But it's you people will work harder for you when they know that, like, I always used to have, I had this leader in the military who, it was like, if he got out there in the trenches and he was picking up trash, you better start picking up trash too. It's one of those things. Like, and we had this director of our hospital years ago, and it's like this myth, right? They're always talking about this Mr. Perry individual, right? Everybody always brings him up, and from like the lowest person on the totem pole to the doctors, and they just talked about the culture of the specific facility that I worked at when this gentleman, Mr. Perry, worked there. And it wasn't about, I'm sure the facility met its goals and its metrics and things like that, but people talk about how this gentleman made them feel. And I think the even more powerful thing is, like, since I've been working in the community for the last 3 years more so and outside of the facility, I've heard his name come up even in the community to long-term residents. And so that speaks volumes to me as a leader of, yes, I know we have these objectives and goals that we have to meet, but when you have people talking about the best director in their opinion is a gentleman who was like the one that met people where they are, and that's that servant leadership that we talk about, and people buy into that, man, and it's really a powerful style of leadership, man.
You're right. And You know, there are really two categories. Oh, Linda's on. She's like, lead by example. You know what? I'm going to put that there because people need to know that. You know what? Don't just know the way, but show the way. Lead by example. I love that, Linda. Thank you for bringing that up. And you know what? That is true. You have to. You know, if somebody is struggling and you just let them flop, and you're that boss that wants to fire fast rather than help people get to a certain level of proficiency, you're going to struggle. And I think a lot of bosses, they don't help those people get to a certain level of proficiency because they don't know how to help them get to a certain level of proficiency. So
Right.
Leading by example is important because that means that you actually have to know the job too. So if you're going to have a team, that team is yours, and you have to be able to go in there and coach people to success. So if they're struggling, they have to be able to be shown how to do it the right way, and you can't do that if you don't have experience working in that position. And there are a lot of people who start off at a job, and this is true. Leadership is harder to be taught than a skill. So
Right.
let's break that down a little bit. There are two different types of skills that are at work. There are the hard skills and there are the soft skills. And the soft skills, that's all interpersonal relationship building. It's how to have a conversation. It's all the stuff that I teach in my business. And it's important to have those soft skills because the technical stuff, which are the hard skills, I'm going to go out there and swing that hammer and I'm going to nail that nail into that board, or I'm going to monitor this spreadsheet and I'm going to report when the numbers are not doing well. And I'm going to come up with a plan to fix those numbers. Those are all hard skills. The soft skills are how you build relationships. And if you want a good work environment, that's where that's really what you have to lean into as much as you possibly can, even though the hard stuff has to be done too.
Right. You know, I like that example of soft skills and hard skills. I think what's interesting though is that people have a hard time with the soft skills. And I think the people who have the most difficult time with the soft skills are those who have other psychosocial issues going outside of work. And so building human connection and using soft skills at work is difficult for people who already have tumultuous relationships at home. I mean, we can pretty much, I mean, if we want to look at numbers, we can look at the fact that greater than 50% of our just regular population deal with issues like divorce, and a large percentage deal with issues like substance abuse and just generational problems that happen with people. And so all the things that I know I see in therapy with people are going to work. I mean, I work with some professional people who when they go to work, they turn on their work hat. But what I've learned over these years of working with people is that part of themselves that they're coming to get help for, they try the best that they can to mask that part of their self. And a lot of that, the way that they do it is by isolating from other people. And so it's easy to hide in a spreadsheet when you lack social skills because you haven't worked on that area of the wellness wheel. And so many people do that. And a lot of people are, especially our introverts out there, right? They're excited about the fact that, yes, we get to work from home. We don't have to go into an office, but what does that do to you just overall in terms of like your development? And so I think, it's those soft skills are so important to have, man, but it's soft skills are uncomfortable for a lot of people.
And I think that's why it's important to, and I know that's why it's important to make sure that once in a while you get your managers together and you talk about it. When you're in these meetings where you have to get your managers together, every once in a while, I would say once every couple of weeks, once a month or whatever, you find a soft skill topic to discuss so that it becomes more normal. What a lot of people do is they get stuck in all these meetings that you get drowned with all the time when you're at work. you always just talk about what's going right and what's going wrong at work. Well, you also have to address how to have those interpersonal relationships and conversations to build those relationships. Because if you don't, then you're absolutely right, Derek. It is not normal anymore.
Right.
And then, you know, doing it is going to be hard, because I talked about a hammer. Well, this isn't, you go out and you want to get a bigger hammer every single time that something goes wrong, and you just punish and punish and punish because you don't understand how to have a conversation to nurture whatever problems are going on with an individual. It's a lot easier to scream and yell at somebody or fire somebody than it is to talk them through a problem and create a learning moment rather than punishing.
Right. Right.
It is easier.
And you know, I'm gonna give a shout out to Linda. Linda is on there, man. Linda is an amazing leader. She is a frontline leader for one of my female veteran coalitions. Linda and I have known each other now, man. It's going on. Wow, it's almost 6 years, 7 years, and she's been literally on the front lines with me for the last 3 years of this coalition work, and we've gone through a lot of attrition. Her and I both together have pivoted in those situations. And one of the things I definitely noticed about her leadership style, and then which is also it helped me, which is there's this term that I use, and it's coalition building by connection, right? That coalition, the Battle Sisters, is not successful because of our hard skills. It's because of the soft skills we've developed by really just connecting with one another. And we used and Linda came up with a very basic strategy, which is, hey, let's have community meetings. And then one of the things I continue to reinforce is, like, we need to look out for each other first as we begin to build this coalition out and engage in this action plan and get more veterans involved. But first, we have to connect with each other. And I think what's been very powerful is that we've been able to do that and able to build a really solid foundation. Because her and I, when we were working together in the previous job, initially we were bumping heads. We were kind of going at it with each other because here it is, I'm the grantor working at this large federal government system. She's the grantee, and we were going back and forth about the handbook and what it said and what it didn't say and an interpretation. And so it was those crucial conversations that made it tense. And since that time, I mean, we've really gotten to know each other, and it's just amazing the work that we've done so far and the work that we're gonna do just by continuing to be vulnerable and be willing to lean into a relationship and grow. And so, Linda, I thank you for joining us. This is a treat.
You know, you brought up a couple of really good things there, and one of those things is you know, leaning into those difficult conversations. And the reason why I wanted to firstly bring that up is when you lean into a difficult conversation and then you get through that conversation with another person, first of all, most people, yelling is not a difficult conversation. Let me go ahead and take a step back first. You know, if something's difficult and you go into it and all you do is scream at somebody, you're not going to come out on top. Neither are they. It's just going to be a losing situation for everybody. So let me go back to where I was. Let me digress. So when you have a difficult conversation with another human being, a calm, a logical, a heartfelt conversation with another human being, you talk through issues that are not easy issues to talk through. And when you come out on the other end of that, you know, and you both keep a level head, or even if you didn't, you were able to talk each other through the struggles and all that other stuff, and you come to an understanding, you learn about other people and you build a relationship through that, because you're not gonna have a calm, difficult conversation with somebody that you don't care about, or over an issue that you don't care about. You're going to take the time to do it right because you do care about that person. So that's another aspect of servant leadership. You do it for the purpose if you don't know the person. And the purpose is bigger than their relationships until the relationships come together for that purpose.
That's good.
And by the way, Linda says that she has also learned so much from you, DB. So she made sure she put that comment in there.
Let's go.
I had to do that shout out, Linda. Hopefully we're not over talking about you. You can tell us to shut up anytime.
Man. Man. It's interesting because also went to this was this year. No, I'm sorry. It was last year, 2023. I went to it's called the Leadership Development Institute, which is the federal government's or the VA's leadership, like for GS employees, like of GS 12 and above. And that was servant leadership was literally the type of leadership that we focused on in this book that they had us, purchase. We really didn't focus on the other modes of leadership. It's really, the work that we do with in a hospital setting, it's almost like, it's not almost like it is like it's required. If you don't have servant leadership when you're working in the human service field, then those fields, you have to put people first. Like the very essence of your work, the business that you do is in the service of people. And so it's interesting because at this training, we were learning about how Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks have a culture of servant leadership within their organizations. And I'm sitting back, and as a leader, I'm like, shouldn't we be teaching them how to be better servant leaders? But we had to go outside of our system to look at Dunkin' Donuts and these other like for-profit businesses who, by the way, they're giving us all this sugar and stuff. How is that helping our health? Like, how can I believe that this person is actually care about my well-being, but yet they even understand this principle of servant leadership, and they've decided to implement that into their organization. Why? Because if they're focusing on servant leadership and they're celebrating people, that's going to retain employees. Like, think about that. Like, what are the benefits? And we're going to go into that in more detail as we continue to work through this idea of servant leadership. But there's so many benefits to being an organization that adopts this servant leadership philosophy.
Yep. Yeah. And let's talk about philosophy. So let's bring a couple things into play there. It depends on who you talk to. There could be 7 leadership styles. There could be 12 leadership styles. There could be 20 leadership styles. It just all depends. But really, servant leadership is the best balance of what I would consider the 2 extremes. So those 2 extremes, and then we talked about this morning, Derek, you have the autocratic leadership style. Yeah. Think of a dictator, somebody who is really primarily self-interested and thinks they have to have control over everything that happens. And so they micromanage. They really embody everything that we talked about during our toxic leadership series. But then you go to the other side, and I'm going to go like this because there's a scale here. So let's go to the laissez-faire side of things. Right. Well, laissez-faire is that style of leadership where you are so hands-off that things just kind of happen, and if the ship sinks, then you probably don't even know it's going to get there until it's too far gone, because you're just kind of leaving people to hang out to dry.
Right.
So, you don't want to, that's just as bad as over controlling. So if you take those scales and you bring them even, right there in the middle is servant leadership, where you are empowering people to do the jobs that they need to do, and then kind of let them do what they got to do, but requiring them to report back to you. That's important, because that's when you know that they need help. If they report back that things are all screwed up, you ask them if you need to step in, and if not, you create a plan to make things better. But you can see those things because you're not in their face micromanaging. So the true value of being a servant leader is you take a step back and you truly empower and you kind of oversee the battlefield, and you're constantly monitoring what's going on, whether it's on your team or multiple teams or in your business, to see what's going on, and you help what needs to be helped, but really you have that vision for the future.
Yeah.
And you have that, you're always keeping in mind what that overall mission is. The servant leader understands how to balance all of that.
Right. Coach, thank you for, I really appreciate your illustration, but more importantly, the visual aid that you just provided, I see that as a continuum. And then I look at myself and I put myself in that continuum, and I realize that at times I go between, and I don't go too far extreme into the autocratic side. So let me preface
Sometimes
that.
we all do.
I don't go too far. But you know what? I'm right on the edge of it sometimes, to where even in the most subtle thing of like, you know what? I don't know if I could trust this person to do this. So then I step in, and instead of allowing that person to learn and grow and really get confident in their role, I might step in out of fear of them not doing it right. And then that's definitely control. And so as you described that continuum, if you will, it's like servant leadership is not necessarily just that I have to always step in and actually do. Sometimes I have to step in and instruct and guide, and not and then trust that that person is going to trust you enough to come back to you, and not going to feel like they're going to be scolded or written up or anything like that. I remember I was listening to I forget the guy, the guy that wrote 75 Hard. He talked about one of his employees making a $5,000 mistake one time. And he may not be the best example of a servant leader necessarily, but when he was giving this example, he sounded like a servant leader. I mean, the way in this particular mode that he was talking about, it was what a servant leader would do if somebody made a $5,000 mistake. How would you respond to that individual? Would you immediately fire them, or would you use that as a teachable moment in order to help them work through that situation? And then on the back end, that person may make you $5 million.
Yep.
They may have lost 5,000, but because you entrusted that job to them and you instructed and you corrected them, now they're bringing in your company $5 million. Guess what? That $5,000 is going to look like chump change at that point. Once you're able to bring in that $5 million, you know what I mean?
I do. And, obviously it depends on what that $5,000 mistake was, but situations always dictate. You just never know what that looks like until you're in that situation. But I agree. I would say most of the time there's always a hold on, where's it at? A coachable moment. Anyway, I believe in coaching for a reason. Coaching really takes people that are at a certain level of proficiency and turns them into champions. And you can't turn people into champions without kind of doing a little bit of teaching, coaching, and then sitting back and kind of letting things happen and letting them come back to you when they need help. And that's called mentoring. And when they come back to you and ask you for help, they look at you as that mentor, and that's important too. So you got to embody all three. You have to understand how to do all three of those things and be all three of those things, because you never know when somebody's going to come up to you, or when somebody's going to need to learn a new skill, or when somebody's just going to need a little left seat, right seat, some coaching to make sure that they get to the next level. And I think that that's important to understand. I love your example with the 75 Hard, with the $5,000 mistake, because if you got rid of everybody at work that makes a mistake, whether it's a $5,000, $10,000, $1,000, or even just showing up late once or twice, if that's not their norm, I mean, there could be a coachable thing there too. And maybe even a relationship builder, because you don't know what's going on in somebody's personal life. There are a whole number of reasons why mistakes happen at work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, people are people. And sometimes they just need a little bit of extra help and an extra support, because they don't know what they don't know till they know it and they learn from it.
That's right.
So, well, DB, we are at 30 minutes. Do you have any wisdom to impart on the audience before we exit our live stream for the evening?
No, I think you just said it well, man.
Okay.
Close it.
Well, good. Keep that in the top of your mind, everybody. You know, make sure that you're doing what Linda said and leading by example, but also putting the welfare of other people before your own. Chances are those people will also look out for you in the end. This was another episode of Warrior Leadership. Today we talked about servant leadership, and we will see you all next week.
Let's go.